This is Dr. Beverly Forsyth, and for the next few minutes I would like to discuss with you the language of labels, understanding OSHA's label elements according to the revised Hazard Communication Standard of 2012. The Hazard Communication Standard, which was enacted in 1983, is also known as the Right to Know Law. What does it mean, the Right to Know Standard? Well, it's very simple. Both employers and employees have the right to know what hazardous chemicals they are exposed to in the workplace. Originally enacted in 1983, OSHA has revised its Hazard Communication Standard, HSC, to align with the United Nations globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemicals. You notice the GHS, Globally Harmonized System. The first day of compliance for the revised Hazard Communication Standard, HCS, is December 1st, 2013. To help companies comply with the revised standard, OSHA is phasing in the specific requirements over several years, December 1st, 2013 through June 1st, 2016. This presentation looks at one aspect of the revised HCS. The Hazard Communication Standard, which is also known as the Right to Know Law, covers 6 major areas. Number 1, evaluation of hazardous chemicals. 2, a written communication program. 3, labeling of hazardous chemicals. And I want you to specifically note number 3. Number 4, safety data sheets, SDS, formerly known as the material safety data sheets. Posting requirements to inform employees of information regarding the SDS. And number 6, last, employee training. There are 2 significant changes regarding the HCS. 1 are new labeling elements, and number 2, a standardized format for the safety data sheets, SDS. If you'll recall, the SDS were formerly known as the material safety data sheets. This presentation will briefly introduce the revised Hazard Communication Standard regarding the labeling elements which must appear on each hazardous chemical container. It is the employer's responsibility to identify all the hazardous chemicals used in the workplace. Then, the employer must evaluate each hazardous chemical. Then, the employer must communicate the information regarding those hazards to their employees in an easy-to-understand language. So let's look at this slide. The standard requires the employers to identify. They have to identify all the hazardous chemicals. Then they have to evaluate those chemicals. Then they have to communicate those hazards to their employees. So what does OSHA identify as physical or health hazards? Among these are combustible liquids, oxidizers, corrosives, reproductive toxins, and non-toxins. So what are some of the items exempt from the HCS standard? Basically, items exempt are items that are regulated by other government agencies. Here are a few. Wood and wood products except wood dust, regulated hazardous products or hazardous waste. You notice the word regulated there. Tobacco products, food, drug, cosmetics, various pesticides, nuisance, particulate, and articles, agricultural or vegetable seed treated with pesticides. This presentation will specifically look at the labeling much more in depth as we progress. Worn or torn labels must be replaced. It is the employee's responsibility to report an inappropriate label to their supervisor. It is the responsibility of the hazard communication officer with that particular company to ensure that appropriate labels are in place and that replacement labels are available. In the future, companies must use much more accessible, user-friendly language in communicating with their employees. OSHA requires employers to use present information in a manner and language that employees can understand. If employers need to communicate work instructions in a language other than English, such as Spanish, the employer must provide training to employees in the same manner. If the employee's vocabulary is limited, the employer's training must account for that limitation. Even if the employee is illiterate, can read, simply telling an employee to read the training manual does not satisfy the employer's training obligation. The employer must communicate in the language and manner that is understandable to the employee. Each label must contain several key items: a product identifier, a signal word, pictogram, a hazard statement or statements, a precautionary statement or statements, and full contact information of the chemical manufacturer, importer, and responsible party. And notice that last one, the contact information. It must be the name, address, and telephone number of the chemical manufacturer. The product identifier is how the hazardous chemical is identified. That includes, but is not limited to, the chemical name, the code number or batch number. The product identifier must be on both the label and in Section 1 of the Safety Data Sheets, the SDS. A signal word must appear on the label as well. A signal word indicates the relative level of severity of the hazard, and it alerts the worker to a potential danger. The HCS allows only 2 signal words to be used total, and only one may be used at a time. One is danger, and the other word is warning. Danger is used for the more severe hazards, and warning is used for the less severe hazards. Only one signal word may appear on a label, no matter how many hazards a chemical may have. So how do you know which signal word to use? If one of the hazards warrants the signal word danger and the other warrants the signal word warning, only the signal word danger, the most severe, should appear on the label. Another label element is the pictogram. As of June 1, 2015, the Hazard Communication Standard requires employers to add a pictogram to all labels. The pictograms have distinctive characteristics. It is the shape of a square set at a point with a black hazard symbol in the center with a red frame. Each pictogram represents a distinct hazard. The pictogram on the label is determined by the chemical hazard classification. So what's not allowed? A red square frame set at a point without a hazard symbol is not a pictogram and is not permitted on a label. However, employers may use additional instructional symbols that are not included in the OSHA HCS pictograms. For instance, you might see an instructional image of a person wearing goggles, which would denote that you need to wear goggles when dealing with that product. As of June 1, 2015, the Hazard Communication Standard will require pictograms on labels to alert users of the chemical hazards to which they may be exposed. OSHA has designated 9 pictograms under the revised Hazard Communication Standard. When a chemical has multiple hazards, different pictograms are used to identify the various hazards. When there are similar precautionary statements, the pictogram providing the most protective information will be attached to the label. We'll start discussing the various pictograms at this point, and soon we'll put all these elements together. But notice here the pictogram for health hazard is a carcinogenic, and notice it's got the red frame, it's set a square set on a corner, and inside you see a man, and it looks like a star radiating out from the organs. So we know automatically that this would deal with respiratory or targeting the organs. Another pictogram is the flame, and I want you to notice that it looks like a leaf and then there's a flame coming outside, or you could think of a flame within a flame. Here is the exclamation mark. The pictogram for the gas cylinder to me looks like a bomb, but this is a gas cylinder, and of course you notice the gas is under pressure. This is a pictogram for corrosion. Here's a pictogram for corrosion. This is a pictogram for the exploding bomb. This is a pictogram for oxidizers. Notice it is a circle with flames shooting out, which is in many ways similar to the flammable, the flame. But you notice for the flame over the circle, the oxidizers, notice that it's a circle with flames shooting out. The pictogram for environmental is a dead tree. You see a dead fish, and you get the idea that there's water standing close. It's aquatic toxicity, which is poison water. The last, and probably the most famous of all the pictograms, is the skull and crossbones, which is acute toxicity, fatal or toxic. To read a label, you need to look for the following elements: a product identifier, signal word, pictogram, hazard statement or statements, a precautionary statement or statements, and full contact information, including the telephone number of the chemical manufacturer, importer, or other responsible party. We are now going to construct a sample label. We've identified the key elements that go on a label, so let's construct a label. You notice our very first piece of information is the chemical identifier, the chemical substance, and batch number. We're now adding our second piece of information, which is the pictogram. Do you see the word warning? That is the signal word. We have now added the third piece of information to the label. Another key element to the label is a hazard statement. Do you notice harmful if swallowed? That is the hazard statement. All labels must have a hazard statement. In addition to the hazard statement, you must include a precautionary statement. In this one, wash hands and face thoroughly after handling. Do not eat, drink, or smoke when using this product. Dispose of contents container in accordance with local, state, and federal regulations. In this label, part of the precautionary statement is a response. And did you notice that where it said first aid? If swallowed, call a doctor. If you feel unwell, rinse mouth. And we come to the last piece of required label elements, and that is full contact information of the manufacturer, the chemical party, whoever is responsible. And it requires their name, their address, and a contact phone number. And this is our completed label. It has all the essential elements, and it's not complicated, but it will be time consuming to keep labels up to date and make sure every container does have a label. More complex labels might include storage information and disposal information. We have now looked at the label elements, how to read a label, and then also how we can construct a label. But the labeling on each container must match the SDS notebook. This presentation focused on the revised labeling elements that employers must provide on all labels. The label information must be consistent with the SDS, or safety data sheets. This is just a small part of the revised hazard communication standard. Do you want or need more OSHA information? Then you need to go to the OSHA website, which is located on the internet at www.osha.gov. That's www.osha.gov. There you will find regulations, newsletters, data and statistics, feeds, blogs, YouTube training videos. One thing, though, I would suggest is that you be sure to scroll down because there are a lot more options than what you will just see if you just look at that on the screen. You need to scroll down to see your full array of options.